The day is long, the night even longer. The afternoon is shorter than the morning, but the evening is twice the length of 2 dusks and half a sunrise. Time has always been my Achilles heel, which is why I never wore a watch on my ankle. My body ached, my bones strained, and my muscles grew tired of the onslaught. But my percentage is low, and I must keep to the path. I swapped my Toyota Triga 80 for the BT Reflex reach truck, an equally impressive steed nonetheless, with a greater altitude range and movability. The day had started badly with a large amount of replens on the system and an overflow of pallets on the loading bay. My duty had been made clear by my commanding officer, Gavin Smithers, at the shift brief. Clear the backlog of replens before attempting any putaways from goods in. Those orders rang loud and harsh in my ears. I could see my fellow warriors struggling on goods in, but I had no choice in the matter. Sacrifices must have been made for the sake of the shift, and priorities lied with replens and the requirement of the pickers. Nothing could stop the endless machine, and the numbers must be achieved no matter what. The replens seemed to never end. A constant supply was needed to feed the pickers' perpetual appetite. Beer, wines, and spirits was the flavour of the day, and at Christmas, the peasants of this great land had a thirst that would not resolve. I was removing the shrink wrap on a pallet of peach schnapps with Longclaw, my trusty safety knife, when Gavin approached me. His face had been hardened by many winters in command and the hard limescale water in his local area. He was always clear and precise with his orders. I had stopped questioning those years ago. What seemed like madness from upon my steed was a calculated risk, backed up with strategical awareness and a spreadsheet that told him what to do.
Hi Frank, there's some pallets that need splitting and chilled goods in. Could you help them out? Cheers mate,
said the commander. Yes sir, I replied with due respect.
Scan onto boards for the time being and speak to Paul Hanna when you get there. He's managing chill today, okay?
He smiled, turned and walked away. At last, a mission to challenge my courageousness and valour, a test of my survival skills and cunning. The chill domain lay far to the east, past the produce department in the first aid room. I had to get prepared and gather supplies and ambient before attempting such a journey. I looked down on my control panel on my trusted steed. Battery charge was running low, a mere 21% left. Protocols demanded I change it at 20% for the sake of the battery. Could I make the trip within the margins of errors? Or should I change the battery before I leave, I thought. I glanced up towards the battery bay to the north. In the distance, I could just make out the helmet of Eric the Viking working his domain, feeding the endless PPTs and lollips and reach trucks with the power they so cravingly desire. Eric was a Slavic warrior and a slave to the protocol laid down by the generals of the establishment. No battery should be changed until it reached 20%, was the decree, and Eric held true to those words. No chance, I thought. Maybe if Warrior Jordan or Harrison had been tasked with battery changing that day, but not Eric. Not the Slavic saviour of Estonia. Nonetheless, with limited power and the clock ticking, I climbed upon my trusty steed and headed for destiny and the perils of the chill department. The air was thick with adventure, and the smell of pine needles and leafy glaze filled my nostrils as I passed the detergent aisle. My mind was working overtime. I had to get supplies before leaving the safety of the ambient domain. I needed water, warmer clothing, and a piss before heading out. I made for the pick desk. There I could resupply. It didn't take long to make the journey. I knew these roads well, and they were filled with warm memories. I waved to young Master Josh, who had been helping out on recoup in the biscuit aisle. A young, promising knight that had been cruelly struck down by genetic abnormalities in his younger years, causing unfortunate hair growth on his head and an unholy interest in textiles. His warm smile and pleasant demeanour gave me hope that I might return unscathed, and reminded me why we fight and the purpose of my employment: to bring a small bit of relief to Middle England and fill the bellies of the peasant folk. I glanced down at my control panel. Still 21%. Steady, old boy. Easy underfoot. There was room at the pick desk. Part pick was emptying, a sure sign that we were catching up on the replays. I manoeuvred my mighty steed into the gap and used the 3 points of contact to dismount. I hear you, old Ben. I hear you. With purpose and a calm heart, I put on a fleece jacket to give me warmth. I refilled my water bottle from the spring of life and headed for the latrine. Relieved and relieved, I had performed my bodily functions to completion. Decrees had been posted on the latrine walls from the generals in charge. I took their advice to heart and washed my hands. Now I am ready. Now I can fulfill my purpose and my commander's orders and bring some order to the chill domain. I mounted my BT Rolex reach truck, adjusted my seat for the long haul, and set off towards the blinding lights and freezing temperatures of the chill department. Along the road to the east lay a footpath upon which 2 fair maidens were heading towards me. They looked up and flashed a seductive smile in my general direction, which made me readjust my seat again. Through their tight vests were the beating hearts of innocence and virtue. An impressive pair of attributes, I thought. I wish I could explore them further, but I mustn't get distracted. Not now. I doffed my cap to the fair maidens out of respect to their heaving innocence and virtue, and carried on to the great shutter door to the east. To open the first shutter door, you must approach slowly, allowing the infrared beam to detect the mast and open fully. Only then will the gods allow such a heavily armed warrior to pass. Technology has improved time these days. Not as fast as those days, but faster than these days, in a day that time has gotten faster and faster over time. Again, time is confusing these days. Well, it was on that day, anyway. The shudder of the massive door rising could be felt through the ground and up into my rectum. Pressure had been building, and combined with the vibrations of the door, nature took over. I drove through, and instantly the cold hit my face and the light burnt my retinas. I winced and shuffled in my seat uncomfortably. Ahead lay the produce domain with all its inhabitants. The noises was confusing and the smell was bad. But I had to be quick and advance through without compromise or delay. I kept off the main highway, trying to avoid these creatures of the produce domain, and hugged the loading bays to the south. This served me well, and I made good progress across the bay. I had to brake a few times as the creatures were unloading a trailer of potatoes. They grunted a few times to show their disgust at this foreign intruder travelling through their domain. But I paid little attention to their words, mostly because they were speaking in an unknown dialect. With my eyes fixed on my objective, I had missed the beckoning calls of their commander, probably in dire need of my help in some way, and pushed on to the final frontier. I approached the final shutter door, the last remaining barrier of sanity between calm lands of the west and the chaotic lands to the east. There was no such fancy technology here, just a simple pressure sensor in the ground and the doors to the chill department would open. It was as if the doors itself wanted you to enter. Fresh meat, new blood, another soul to be consumed by the chill domain. Many had entered in good spirit and willingness to help, but not all had been able to leave, and those who had left with the scars for everyone to see. What was my fate to be? As strong as I was in body, was my mind ready for the horrors that lay ahead? I triggered the pressure sensor in the floor, and the door began to rise. Slowly at first, creaking and cracking like a pensioner getting up from a chair, then quicker and quicker like the jaws of hell were welcoming me in. I reached the top and clattered on the ceiling. I swallowed a dry swallow, looked to the heavens and prayed. Strength and honour do not fail me now. May the gods of warehousing and HR smile down on me with wisdom and courage. Let me pass through the gates of chill unharmed and be allowed to continue on peacefully. And let's try and get my payslip right this month. Amen. As I entered the gates of chill, the blood-red glow of my display flashed a warning light, as if to foreshadow coming events. My battery was down to 19%. I had reached minimum safe battery life, and according to protocol, I should immediately head for the battery bay and seek the assistance of the Slavic warrior. But it was too late. A horde of desperate loaders were approaching from the west and pushing me deeper and deeper into the depths of the chill domain. There was no turning back now. I scanned the chamber for my objective. In front of me lay the definition of chaos and evil. The new starters were everywhere, rambling in a chaotic circles like rabid dogs, climbing over pallets with no regard for health and safety. The large turbines roared overhead, blasting out freezing winds as low as 2 degrees. The lights fried my eyes with artificial light, like a vindaloo on a hot day to a gentle bottom. The closest thing I've ever seen to this madness before was a video on YouTube I once watched. The one-winged Jedi was giving his insights about the Middle East and giving his honest opinion. Oh, the depravity of it all. It struck a fear in me that I had not felt for such a long time. A time I had pushed back into the recesses of my mind. A time the time itself had forgotten. At that time there was no time, but time itself. A time in which time had lost time to time only time could tell. I could feel my brain being twisted and crushed by the demons of this underworld. Concentrate, I told myself. Pull yourself together. This is no way for a warrior of the elite ambient goods in alliance to conduct himself. I tried to control my feelings and anxieties and pushed on ever deeper into the chamber. In the far distance, standing alone on top of a raised platform, I spotted the commander. The light bounced off his shiny head like a beacon of hope in a land of desperation. Paul Hannah stood alone in the chaos. He cut a lonely figure in the neon light, beads of sweat forming on his ever-furrowed brow. He was barking orders to the indigenous fauna at his feet, trying to relay complex information to the single-cell organisms that just stared back at him like puppy dogs needing to pee. I could hear him losing his cool as I drove past. No, close grid 2 and then you and you pick in grid 3 and you pick in grid 5. It's not that complicated, okay? You understand? The life forms known as new starters replied with grunts and snorts, then nodded their heads towards the commander to show they understood his words. They turned and began to walk, dragging their feet as they shuffled, heading towards grid 4 to start the long day's picking. Paul stood alone, a shadow of his former self, his head in his hands and his beard poking out. A single tear of frustration ran down his face. Allah was nowhere to be found. I didn't bother the commander for the whereabouts of the pallets that needed splitting, as I could see the towering skyscrapers in the middle of the bay. He had suffered enough. Only the gods or a Browning machine gun could help him now. I approached the pallets in a clearing off to the south. I was in luck. No one within 20 metres. I quickly dismounted. 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. Never forget, old Ben. I was down safely. I drew long claw from my scabbard and started to slash at the shrink wrap surrounding the pallets. There were 3 stacks to cut and time was ticking. Time always ticked and time would tick along to time till time became time no more. No, there's no time for another time analogy. Time was ticking. Just one more stack to slash when the most unlikely of creatures poked its balding head out of the corner of the pallet. Its ID tag dropped from its hairy chest. I'd heard there were some full-time warriors in Chill, but I'd never seen one before. Well, not an ambient. Hello, my little friend. My name is Frank. I'm here to help. Have no fear. I don't know if this creature could understand the words I was using, let alone comprehend their meaning. I am Julian. I am hungry. You have food in big machine? Said the orc. No, it is against company policy. But you should know that too. You're Sainsburys staff. Nodding at his ID badge. The orc turned his ID badge to look at it and was instantly frightened by the picture and dropped the badge. So they tell me. When food, when eat, hungry, said the beast, stroking his vast belly. You're entitled to a 36-minute break whenever you want. You can go now, if you want, I said in a gentle voice, not to scare the creature. His head jerked back, then forward. Julian, eat now. Yes, Julian, hungry. Julian, feed. Julian, want fresh meat. He started to slobber down his vest at the mere thought of fresh meat and scampered off into the forest of new starters, heading for the canteen. I hope he finds what he's looking for in the canteen. Whatever it is, it won't be fresh.
I finished slashing the third pallet and mounted my BT reflex roller truck and began the complex and delicate matter of splitting the pallets. The job took a good 30 minutes to split 3 pallets correctly, using standard working practices and following their guidelines. The sun had started to set in the east as I started my return journey to the warmth of the ambient domain. I could see Commander Paul curled up in the fetal position as I passed the chill desk, rocking back and forth, whimpering on the floor.
Why are they all in grid 4?
Once again I kept quiet and chose to pass unseen, for I was not trained as a mental health first aider and my skills would be obsolete. Besides, time had started to tick again, and as you well know, when time is time, then time has no time for time. My God, I need to get out of here. These lands to the east are not meant for sane minds like mine. I made for the chill shutter door, and quickly. The shutter door was in sight. The relative safety of the produce department was in my grasp when I had to slam on my brake as the orc named Julian jumped out in front of me, growling and drooling. "Arr, you lie!" he screamed. "Yeah, no fresh meat, no blood, only a vegetarian lasagna. Arr. Julian wants fresh meat. Julian angry at Frank. Frank must die for misleading Julian. Arr. The orc was testing my resolve. He drew his safety knife from his belt and slashed out in my general direction. His eyes run red with blood at the mere thought of battle and the taste of fresh meat. I instantly jumped off my forklift, which is against working practices and Ben's advice, but the fog of war had descended and I was eager to teach this orc manners. I drew Longclaw from my scabbard and I held it with 2 hands ready for the engagement. He lunged at me with a pointy end and its 5mm box-cutting tool, narrowly missing my vital organs. I countered by swinging for the creature's head, but it was blocked by the orc's left hand. We struggled for what seemed like a long time, but it wasn't. Sparks flew as our safety knives clashed under the fluorescent lights of the chill domain. Blow after blow was struck by both parties, till finally there was a break in the combat. I composed myself. I took a deep breath. I am not responsible for the menu in the canteen, the lack of nutritious meat, or vitamin-rich alternatives. Arr, who is responsible for such travesties and malice? Arr, replied the orc. I believe it is an outside contractor, paid to provide us with meals, but clearly they are not as honourable as you or I said in a low and softened voice. In the canteen there is a QR code that you can scan and leave suggestions. Maybe you could try that. Hoping these words would calm the beast and bring an end to our duel. Okay, I'll try that then. And with that, the orc sheathed his safety knife and slumped off back into the chill domain, dragging his feet as he went. As quick as the fight had started, it was over. All that over a vegetarian lasagna, I thought. As much as I hate to quote the French, I had to admit it. Napoleon Bonaparte was right. An army does march on its stomach, which is what I wrote on the canteen website later that day on my lunch. To this day, I have not had a reply, and vegetarian lasagna is still served with the same hate and malice every Tuesday. Oh, when will the general learn to change their ways? From the order and safety of the elite ambient goods in alliance to the orcs in the wild lands of the chill domain, lunchtime on a Tuesday at Sainsburys distribution centre is a sombre affair. There was a constant beeping from my BT reflex reach truck.
I marched over, mounted my steed. The battery readout read 5%. That was it. There was no time to waste. No time to fanny about with timey things. No time to die. A terrible James Bond movie, and I had to move quicker than the plot in that film. I slammed the truck into gear and with a heavy heart left the chaotic chill chamber with its under-malnutritioned orcs and mentally tortured manager behind me and headed for the relative safety of the battery bay. The journey was uneventful and calm to what I had just witnessed in Chill. The produce domain had a more welcoming feel to it this time. I moved swiftly past the loading bay where they were still unloading the same trailer of potatoes and headed for home. As the infrared beam hit my mast and the shutter door began to open to the ambient domain, my heart soared with a sense of relief and delight. I drove through, swung north to the distant lights of the battery bay, eager to see the recharging flashing lights of the chargers and the warrior known as Eric, the Slavic savior of Estonia. I was home, safe and sound, and eager to get into the fight against the replanes and maybe, just maybe, do a few putaways to help my fellow warriors and goods in. I'm Frank Miller, warehouse operative, first aider, reach and counterbalance truck driver, fire marshal, approved, a member of the elite Ambient Goods in Alliance, and I am back. Charge!